This show is produced by the Hartman Media Company. For more information and links to all our great podcasts, visit hartmanmedia.com.
Welcome to Creating Wealth with Jason Hartman. During this program, Jason is going to tell you some really exciting things that you probably haven't thought of before, and a new slant on investing. Fresh new approaches to America's best investment that will enable you to create more wealth and happiness than you ever thought possible. Jason is a genuine, self-made multimillionaire who not only talks the talk, but walks the walk. He's been a successful investor for 20 years and currently owns properties in 11 states and 17 cities. This program will help you follow in Jason's footsteps on the road to financial freedom. You really can do it. And now, here's your host, Jason Hartman, with the complete solution for real estate investors.
Hey, welcome to the Creating Wealth Show. This is episode number 505, and this is your host, Jason Hartman. Thank you so much for joining me today. So, on many previous episodes, I have talked about the amazing, literally amazing demographics coming at the rental market over the next decade plus. And potentially, I don't really have any way of empirically knowing this, but potentially they are the best they've ever been in U.S. history. It is nothing but amazing. Every part of this, which we have talked about in depth on many prior episodes, it's amazing. I mean, you look at the millennial generation, and they are this huge cohort, the largest demographic cohort in American history, slightly larger than the baby boomers. And they grew up seeing their parents go through a housing crisis and a stock market crisis and an employment crisis, or I should say unemployment crisis. They saw their parents get burned, and they are in an anemic job market. It's hard to find employment. It's not going to be the typical thing that used to exist, by the way, where the typical millennial, well, they weren't a millennial back then, they were a Gen Xer, my generation. The typical Gen Xer, they'd be 26, 27 years old and they're buying their first house, right? Or even younger many times. But nowadays, that has just changed. Because with an anemic job market, they've got to have mobility. Mobility is the best thing you can have on a resume, as I often say. Here's another article that just kind of, among so many other reasons, the massive amount of student loan debt, not having faith in that American dream of homeownership, and an anemic employment market, and needing mobility, and the list goes on, family formation starting later, people not really getting married at any big rate anymore, this massive growth in the single population, the largest voter bloc in the last 3 presidential elections, which most people don't even consider that a voter bloc, right? Because singles are of both genders, they're of all ages, they're of all races. So, it's not considered a voting bloc, but it really is. I mean, single is a voting bloc, and it's the largest voting bloc in the last 3 presidential elections. So here's a Business Insider article I came across that says apartment renters just aren't crazy about buying a home. It's just really interesting. It comes at it from an interesting angle because it says, and I'll just read a little bit of it to you. It says, on an almost daily basis, we hear the question, when will the millennial first-time buyer emerge? While predicting the behavior of any cohort still recovering from high levels of unemployment and a record amount of student loan debt can be tricky, the response of some of the largest apartment REIT operators, and a REIT, of course, is a real estate investment trust. These are the big owners of many apartment buildings, right? Is an unhesitating no time soon. When your apartment lease expires, you have 2 choices, renew or move out. Each quarter, we track the percentage of residents who move out of an apartment to purchase a home. Other reasons for moving can include job change, eviction, rising, rents rising too high, etc. By studying publicly traded apartment REITs who manage a combined 520,000 units, we learned the following. Number 1, during the housing boom of the early to mid-2000s, roughly 1 in 5 renters leaving their apartment opted to purchase a home. In fact, the national homeownership rate peaked in 2004 at the same time the percentage of those moving out to purchase a home was peaking. Now, my commentary. Remember, I've talked to you many times in prior episodes about what I call the 3 dimensions of real estate. Now, there's really more dimensions, but these 3 dimensions that I talk about commonly are people buying, people renting, and interest rates. And of course, the values of homes reacting mostly to interest rates and housing affordability. And when I do this, I always talk about, I give an example of my friend Nancy, who I ran into at the car wash sometime circa 2003, 2004 in Irvine, California. And she worked at the time, maybe she's still there, I'm not sure, for the Irvine Company, the largest apartment owner in Orange County, if not all of California, possibly. They're certainly a giant company. I said to Nancy the typical question. I said, "Hey, how's business?" And she said, "Oh, it's really kind of tough right now because everybody is moving out of apartments to buy homes from you." Now, back in that era, I was in traditional real estate. It was before I sold my traditional real estate company to Coldwell Banker. And, I thought, well, isn't that interesting? Interest rates are very low. Prices are going up. Housing affordability was still reasonably good. It got bad later in the boom, and that's, of course, a sign of a bubble coming. And that's how counter-cyclical it is. So when interest rates are low and it's easy to qualify for loans, remember back then you could fog a mirror and get a loan, then you have this kind of market where everybody just moves out, okay, and they buy. And now you have kind of this weird scenario because, of course, interest rates are extremely low, but the lenders are making it pretty difficult to qualify for loans, right? So that's kind of an odd situation. You also have a time right now where in most markets, housing affordability is quite desirable. It's very good. People can afford to buy, but they can't necessarily qualify for loans. Now you add on to that the additional layer of psychology. And it's what I talked about when I started this segment of the show, where I talked about Generation Y, the millennial generation, and how they just don't really seem to psychologically have that same concept of the American dream. First of all, they're putting off marriage, they're putting off household formation. A lot of them are living at home with their parents. A lot of them are renting. They have massive student loan debt. They like mobility, and they like the social life that renting offers. It offers usually a better social life than owning, unless you're a family and you live on a family-ish neighborhood and so forth, and that can be a different kind of social life.
This show is produced by the Hartman Media Company. For more information and links to all our great podcasts, visit hartmanmedia.com.
And so they're putting off this choice, right? And so you layer all this into the equation, and the decade of renters coming at us is like this tidal wave. It's, like the movie, right? The perfect storm. And it makes being a landlord a very desirable thing right now. The article goes on to say, since 2008, the percentage of renters moving out to purchase a home has remained below the historical average of 17%. Well, the homeownership rate has continued to decline. Now, when you look at stats like this, this is just me talking. When you look at stats like this, it's important to make another distinction that is hard to survey. And so you have to sort of accept a lot of anecdotal evidence rather than, really firm empirical facts, right? Because you can't survey individual homeowner, single-family home landlords very well. You can only survey big apartments. So here, this article is based on, surveying these huge REITs, these huge institutional landlords that manage 520,000 units. Now, many of you listening own, 20, 30, 40, or even more single-family homes, right? But nobody is surveying you, right? So you don't get stats very good on single-family homes or individual owners because surely no one has ever called you and surveyed you about what your tenants are doing, right? So that's one other thing you always have to just consider with this. We have to always look at the apartments. Now, a lot of these people would much rather live in a single-family home, and I think that's the big opportunity for us, because by and large, our clients offer single-family home rentals, and that can be a great opportunity for them. So, there's a graph here that's included, and it is staggering. It's amazing. You look at back in 2004, up to really about 2007 or 8, and you saw that the homeownership rate was high, and then it started to plummet, which I think is actually a great thing. I think the homeownership rate is still a little too high. You've heard me talk about that on prior episodes. It's funny you would hear a guy in real estate say that. I know I'm probably the only one. But, I think the homeownership rate realistically should be around 50%, maybe 55%. Now it's hovering at around 64%, and it peaked out at nearly 70%. And we did that talk at our Meet the Masters event a couple of years ago called 6 Years, 6 Million New Renters. And it looks like we're going to be right. And one of the other things we pointed out is that if Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were to stop being subsidized by the government, if they were to be allowed to fail or, fail for whatever reason, or rein in their horns and become drastically smaller, as they should, another real estate guy saying something that you'll never hear any other real estate people say, I think Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac should go away. They cause distortions in the market, just as Sallie Mae Sallie Mae with student loans, okay? These are just silly, stupid government agencies. They shouldn't be allowed to exist. If they were to go away, we predict that could mean an additional up to about 25 million new renters. Whoa, what an opportunity. Now, you'd probably see home prices decline because remember, in that 3 dimensions of real estate, those things go counter-cyclically, or they're non-correlating indicators, I guess is the way I want to say that. Interesting stuff to keep in mind. Now, I want to get to a couple listener questions, but before I do, I want to say something. Listeners, you need to listen to the prior episodes, and you need to come to our live events. We've got our Memphis property tour coming up in just a couple of weeks. You should be there. A lot of the questions you're asking are answered at the Creating Wealth seminar, the live seminar. And here you've got it with a tour and a private dinner and a semi-private tour of Graceland. We may just have an Elvis sighting there too. So come to our live events, okay? We don't have them that often. So we'll be in Memphis in a couple weeks. You've got the Creating Wealth seminar. You've got the property tour. You've got some meals with me. You can sit right next to me and ask me questions to your heart's content, and I will answer them. But if you don't go to the live event, you need to buy something. You need to go to jasonhartman.com and you need to purchase the Creating Wealth Home Study course, okay? Just go buy that, listen to it. What is it about? It's like a 9-hour day condensed into about 4 hours, 5 hours of audio. And you can just download that, listen to it. And, on the podcast, it's great for news and current events and current commentary and these interviews with the great guests that we have on our show. But, again, it's piecemeal. The Creating Wealth seminar is a course, and it's, it follows an outline. It follows a really nice overview and gives you all the stuff, the broad knowledge you need to know. Okay? So you need both of these things. It's like saying you went to school, maybe you went to college, and you got all of your basic academics taken care of there, but you still read the news and listen to the news, right? That's what the podcast is. It's the news, combined with some tips and some good commentary there. But do that. Come to our live events, buy that product, go to jasonhartman.com, click on products, and invest in the Creating Wealth Home Study course. It's really cheap. It's $297. And, we've had thousands of people have that course now. So take advantage of it, okay? It's really a great thing. So let's get to a couple of questions here. This one comes from Matt in Colorado. Here we go.
Hi, Jason. My question is in relationship to mitigating risk for properties. What if you have, let's say, 10 properties in 3 states? Do you have an LLC to manage the properties and then another LLC that owns the properties as assets, thus mitigating the risk if there's ever any liability issue where a tenant possibly sues and tries to recover for an amount greater than what you're insured for? I'm just trying to understand how you silo risk between your properties so that you're not exposed should something accidental happen to one of the tenants and they seek to go after you for an amount in excess of your insurance. Thanks. This is Matt.
Hey, Matt, great question. We have discussed that on prior episodes and, of course, at our live events. The first thing I have to say, of course, is I am not an attorney. I am also not a tax advisor. But my personal experience with this and, and what I've heard from so many clients is what I can share with you. Number one, generally speaking, I think the use of LLCs and entities can certainly offer some asset protection. I think it is largely over-promoted. It does create some complexity when investing in real estate. If you put your properties into LLCs, the single-family homes, I'm talking about the single-unit properties or anything up to 4 units, it can make it a little bit more difficult to get insurance, okay? And insurance might be a little bit more expensive. There are fewer providers providing it to entity owners and rather than individual owners. And also, in all my years of doing this, I cannot remember ever hearing a lawsuit where you had the typical slip and fall, where you had the tenant claim that they were injured and they sued the landlord and it created some kind of liability for the landlord. Certainly not to say it couldn't happen. It can happen, but I have never heard of it happening. It hasn't happened to me, and I've had hundreds of tenants. It's just, I think the risk is kind of overrated. I think it's pretty easy to insure around this stuff. Now, there are other types of risk too. You could have a liability from another activity. You might get sued in your business or in another part of your life, say a car accident or something like that, and they might try and attach assets. And, there are ways with LLCs to protect those assets from the external threat versus the internal threat, which is the one to which you're referring. And one strategy, if you want to go the entity route, you don't mind the additional expense and the additional complexity, it can certainly offer some greater protection. If you want to go that route, you can have maybe 3 LLCs in 3 states. You mentioned 10 properties that you had, and I believe you said they were in 3 different states. So you might do 1 LLC in each state. You might have that LLC owned by another LLC in another state, and you might put that in a desirable state, such as Wyoming or Nevada or one of the others that offer some greater protections. For example, in Wyoming, they offer charging order protection, so that if an external threat occurs and you are sued and you have a creditor come to you, they may be in a position where they will have to wait to collect until you take a distribution. And if you don't take a distribution, they just have to keep waiting, possibly forever. So there are some reasons to do this. Talk to an attorney. We've had many attorneys on the show talking about this stuff before at our Meet the Masters events. We have attorneys come and speak, and any of our investment counselors at my office can refer you to an attorney who can help you with this kind of stuff. Again, I can't practice law. I don't know enough about it. There are a lot of complexities, but those are some initial thoughts to guide you and maybe bring up some questions when you do talk to an attorney. Okay, let's go to our next question from our listener, Steven, who has called in many times. And here's another question. We have definitely covered this one many times on prior episodes. And just to say, I did not yet move back to the Socialist Republic of California. I'm looking for a place there. I do have a big tax benefit I have to move back and reestablish residency for. So I do still live in Arizona at the time of this recording, but I'm looking. So I'm going to answer this question about renting versus owning. Here we go.
Hey, Jason, Dr. Steve G. Jones, clinical hypnotherapist, here again. And I have a question about owning versus renting your primary residence. I noticed that you rent your primary residence, and your reasoning, well, right now you're in California. I understand that because
Not
there was
there
some
yet.
tax thing. You had to move there to get some kind of tax savings. You wanted to be in La Jolla, so you're renting in La Jolla because
Not yet.
property prices there are too expensive. I understand all of that. But before any of that, you were living in Arizona, renting a place that I think was a condo for about $5,000 a month, or you were trying to. That was your goal, to rent it for around $5,000 or $6,000 a month, I believe. And to me, that doesn't make any sense because
It makes lots of
it's very
sense.
wasteful. Sounds like
Not wasteful.
It's about $60,000 a year flushed down the toilet.
No, it's
So
not.
I don't understand in the scheme of things and in the long-term planning of things. I don't understand that. It sounds like a live for today, don't plan for tomorrow type move. And I find that, I don't know, I'm not able to comprehend that as a person who is interested in building wealth over time. It just sounds extremely wasteful. So, on the other hand, I understand you being a single guy and wanting to, have the freedom to move around, but wouldn't it be better to have a stable home base? Now, not considering this California thing, that's different altogether. I'm talking about before you realize that. Wouldn't it make sense to have more a stable base that you owned, that you were paying down the mortgage on, not paying someone else's mortgage, and from there you could go out and about? And I ask that because I'm in the same situation, or I'm in the same situation as you, and I'm considering that exact challenge, rent versus own. So I'd love to hear your reasoning behind why you chose to rent and how that makes financial sense. Because one more thing, you could own a primary residence and you could travel around the world like you do anyway, and like I do, and those are all tax deductible because they're all business related. So please explain. Thank you.
Okay, so that question has been addressed many, many times in prior episodes, and it's a good question. Here's the deal. If you are going to live in a home or a condo, well, I don't like owning condos at all, okay? So I almost never think a condo is a good deal. There may be an exception here or there, but almost never. But if you're going to live in a single-family home that's worth less than about $150,000, it makes sense to own it, okay? And because if you're going to rent that property, you're probably going to pay $1,500 a month to rent it. And that's going to be about 1% of the value. So in that case, I would recommend that you buy that home and you live there, okay? It makes sense. But in La Jolla, for $5,000 a month, I can get the use of a $1.2 million or maybe even more home, okay? And that is a phenomenal deal because I can take and acquire $1.2 million worth of other real estate assets in markets that make sense. For example, I could buy 12 $100,000 homes with that $1.2 million worth of real estate, and I could put those homes in 3 diverse markets, 4 in each, and I bet I could get them to generate $1,000 per month. So I would be getting $12,000 per month for my $1.2 million worth of real estate versus getting the use of a $1.2 million gorgeous home for myself for only $5,000 a month. That makes complete sense. You cannot argue with that. It is a great deal to be a renter of a high-end property. Now, you referred to the property in Arizona that I was trying to rent, and I'm no longer trying to rent. That was quite a while ago, so you obviously listened to an old episode. This property, probably still on the market, is a really high-end penthouse condo, and it was listed for $2.4 million last time I checked. It was about, I think, 5,500 square feet or something like that, and it was newer. It's beautiful. It overlooks Tempe Town Lake in Arizona. And that I did make them an offer where I went up to $6,000 a month on. But if I'm going to invest $2.4 million in a real estate deal, I want to get $24,000 a month. I want to get 1% per month. Okay? Anything else, it's better to rent. And look, here's the thing you got to understand. I remember I was at church years ago, and the pastor said, he was talking about materialism, and I was at church in Orange County, like the most materialistic place going, right? So I was there, and he was talking about how that none of us really own anything. And I think this is a concept that is worth thinking about in this discussion of rent versus buy. Because none of us really do own anything. We're not taking any of this stuff with us, right? When we pass on, as the pastor said, we are all just trustees from birth to death. We get to own and control things while we're alive, and it is incumbent upon us to do the best job we can with our financial resources and to plan for the long term, but also live a little bit today. Don't deny living today either. And balance that equation of instant gratification versus long-term planning. If you live in a house that you own and you pay $5,000 a month to own it, you could rent that house out to somebody else and charge them whatever the market rent is. So when you're saying I'm just flushing $60,000 a year down the toilet, you're just wrong about that. Okay? I'm not doing that at all. Okay? We're all renting. If you live in a house in which you own, you have an opportunity cost where you can't rent that house to somebody else, or you can't use that money tied up in that property or that loan that you got against that property for some other property that could produce a return for you. So this is the deal, okay? We're all renting. We're all renters. Even if you think you're an owner, you're in essence still a renter because there's an opportunity cost that goes with it, okay? So I hope that answers your question. That's been debated for many, many years. You know what? I was going to have Dan Mitchell, senior fellow from the Cato Institute, on as our guest today. But once again, I went very long, so we'll have Dan on probably the next episode. And be sure to go and get your final chance to register for the Memphis Property Tour. It's almost full, and it's only a couple weeks away. We'd love to have you join us. We've got a private dinner at Graceland, Elvis Presley's former home, Graceland. So that'll be really cool. And we've got a semi-private tour of Graceland, too. So not only will we look at some good properties, not only will you get the Creating Wealth in Today's Economy seminar, and not only will we be able to spend a lot of time together and have informal conversations, but we will also have the Graceland stuff, which I think is kind of cool. I wanted to do it 2 years ago when we had a tour there, and we just never pulled it off. So this time we did. So join us, and I will look forward to talking to you on the next episode and seeing you in Memphis.
I've never really thought of Jason as subversive, but I just found out that's what Wall Street considers him to be.
Really? Now, how is that possible at all?
Simple. Wall Street believes that real estate investors are dangerous to their schemes because the dirty truth about income property is that it actually works in real life.
I know. I mean, how many people do you know, not including insiders, who created wealth with stocks, bonds, and mutual funds? Those options are for people who only want to pretend they're getting ahead.
Stocks and other non-direct traded assets are a losing game for most people. The typical scenario is you make a little, you lose a little, and spin your wheels for decades.
That's because the corporate crooks running the stock and bond investing game will always see to it that they win. This means, unless you're one of them, you will not win.
And unluckily for Wall Street, Jason has a unique ability to make the everyday person understand investing the way it should be. He shows them a world where anything less than a 26% annual return is disappointing.
Yep, and that's why Jason offers a one-book set on creating wealth that comes with 20 digital download audios. He shows us how we can be excited about these scary times and exploit the incredible opportunities this present economy has afforded us.
We can pick local markets untouched by the economic downturn, exploit packaged commodities investing, and achieve exceptional returns safely and securely.
I like how he teaches you how to protect the equity in your home before it disappears and how to outsource your debt obligations to the government.
And this set of advanced strategies for wealth creation is being offered for only $197.
To get your Creating Wealth Encyclopedia Book 1, complete with over 20 hours of audio, go to jasonhartman.com/store.
If you want to be able to sit back and collect checks every month, just like a banker, Jason's Creating Wealth Encyclopedia series is for you. This show is produced by the Hartman Media Company, all rights reserved. For distribution or publication rights and media interviews, please visit www.hartmanmedia.com or email media@hartmanmedia.com. Nothing on this show should be considered specific personal or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own, and the host is acting on behalf of Platinum Properties Investor Network, Inc. exclusively.
As an income property investor, imagine being able to tap into a nationwide network, actually a worldwide network, of investors who share your same challenges and successes. Imagine being able to leverage the experience of experts and learn from their achievements and their mistakes. The Empowered Investor Inner Circle is an exclusive community of like-minded and successful investors who help each other invest smarter and avoid common setbacks and pitfalls. Join us today and take your portfolio to the next level. Level up and learn from the mistakes of others. Level up and effectively self-manage your portfolio. Level up and increase your peace of mind and your profits. Level up and gain greater control.
When you join the Empowered Investor Inner Circle, you are joining a network of accomplished, experienced, and knowledgeable investors. Investors who will help you take control of your investments while saving you time and money. Managing a portfolio of income properties in a diverse range of markets across America has never been easier. With technology, almost every aspect of income property investing can be done from the comfort of your own home. Join the Empowered Investor Inner Circle for monthly live training sessions with Jason Hartman and special guests to discuss which investment strategies will work the best with your unique life situation and portfolio. Get regular real estate updates and articles so you're in the know and up to date with what's happening in the world of income properties. You will also receive inside access to Jason and his team of investment counselors who will quickly answer any of your questions. Access our Rolodex of vetted resources, including property managers, contractors, plumbers, and electricians, so you know you're getting someone who does high-quality work. Act now and we'll include 1 free year of access to Property Tracker, a web-based program that will help you manage your income, expenses, legal documents, contracts, and all contacts associated with administering income properties nationwide. A 1-year subscription to Property Tracker costs $347 per year, but if you sign up for the Empowered Investor Inner Circle today, you will receive 1 year of Property Tracker access for free. Don't let this unique opportunity pass you by. Join the Empowered Investor Inner Circle today.